SB 140 is about protecting Georgia children from being sterilized and surgically altered by irreversible experimental medical procedures. This bill safeguards children who struggle with a mental health disorder known as pediatric gender dysphoria.
To the children out there and to their families who know that they are being discussed in such an intimate way, know that you are loved, know that you are valued, know that you matter and your life matters to everyone who loves you.
An emotional debate in the House over the bill to ban gender-affirming surgeries for minors. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. More on the news of the day under the Gold Dome coming up. In the studio with our lawmaker guests, we're going to explore several issues, including helping state workers get insulin at a reduced cost, improving the economic and workforce prospects of areas surrounding Georgia's 10 HBCUs, and requiring landlords to provide carbon monoxide detectors in rentals. Later, we'll get the perspective of a couple of young journalists who are passionate about covering politics. What's different about the way they look at what's happening under the Gold Dome? We'll find out. But first, as always, we have the news of the day from our Capitol correspondent, Rochelle Ritchie.
Well, Donna, a sad and controversial day here at the Capitol. The morning started with a press conference by the Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus to remember the victims of the Atlanta spa shootings on the second anniversary.
So today we honor and remember those that we lost, and we continue to work on their behalf and in their honor. Their names are Sun Chung Park, Hyun Jung Grant, Sun Cha Kim, Yong A Yu, Xiaojie Tan, Dao Yo Feng, Delania Yon Gonzalez, and Paul Andre Michaels. May our memories of them continue to be a blessing, and may the injustice of these senseless losses continue to fuel the change we need to see.
With members of the AAPI Caucus and U.S. Representative Lucy McBath at her side, Representative Michelle Au said the fight continues for more common sense gun control.
We persisted, we stayed, and we grew. And this past year, we elected the largest legislative AAPI caucus in the continental United States, right here in Georgia. We pushed, we did not back down, and we made sure that we were heard, not just for ourselves, but for our communities, and for those voices not always heard in buildings like this, and for those we lost on March 16th of 2021. So this morning, I'm pleased to tell you that Mr. Webb and I just walked back from presenting HB 161, the first substantive committee hearing for a gun safety bill that we have had since the tragic events 2 years ago to this day.
Robert Peterson, whose 63-year-old mother, Young A.U., was killed in that shooting, hoped her death would give voice to the issues that the AAPI community faces.
My mother was robbed of her voice, her life at 63. Her liberty and her pursuit of happiness was taken from her. It was taken through a violent expression of hatred and gun violence. Today, we are no longer satisfied with thoughts and prayers. We are demanding safety and justice for our community and advocacy for systemic change from our leaders.
Also marking the occasion, an Atlanta Justice rally at the Georgia Freight Depot. And a local theater is screening a PBS documentary called Rising Against Asian Hate, one day in March. And in the House, emotions ran high over SB 140, a controversial bill that prohibits hospitals and other healthcare facilities from performing gender-affirming surgical procedures and providing transitioning hormonal treatment for people under 18.
To the children out there and to their families who know that they are being discussed in such an intimate way, know that you are loved. Know that you are valued. Know that you matter and your life matters to everyone who loves you.
The bill triggering a number of passionate words from House members today. Those for
SB 140 is about protecting Georgia children from being sterilized and surgically altered by irreversible experimental medical procedures. This bill safeguards children who struggle with the mental health disorder known as pediatric gender dysphoria.
And on the other side, those adamantly against.
Gender dysphoria is something that needs multidisciplinary attention. And so now we as a body, a very distinguished body, that has less than 3% doctors, are going to now vote on a bill that's going to have such a negative impact. We are not doctors.
SB 140 was first presented through HB 653 and has seen a contentious debate since. The sponsor, Representative Jeff Bonner, defending the necessity of his legislation.
The polling that's been done very clearly shows that this is an issue that a lot of folks, regardless of their political affiliation, are very passionate about. And I think most reasonable people agree that restricting prohibiting surgeries and hormone therapy to those under 18 is a very reasonable approach to this issue.
Democrats worry the bill will force some to turn to dangerous alternatives.
What's going to be the impact of this bill? I want to show you. Do you know what this is? These are black market drugs for gender-affirming care. This is what parents will have to start giving their children, similar to the THC issue we had here, where we were all so concerned about parents trying to help their kids through medical instances who needed support. Instead of having to travel state lines, go on the black market, order, and get it in black bags,
Despite the risks, concerns, and objections, SB 140 passed 96 to 75, both sides reacting swiftly.
As a career person who served on a local school board, a father of 2 children, I'm very concerned about allowing, ideologies to be pushed down too soon when people want to make a decision that is going to be potentially life-altering, and they need to be informed about the true risks and not, pushed too soon into a decision that would be permanent.
They are attacking transgender children to rile up their base for their own political purposes. It's disgusting, frankly. It's disgusting and it's harmful, and Georgians deserve so much better.
And Donna, that is my Capitol Report. Back to you.
Thank you, Rochelle. We're going to look now at several topics: insulin, carbon monoxide detectors, and HBCUs. And joining us are Senator Sonia Halpern of Atlanta and Senator Nikki Merritt of Grayson in Gwinnett County. Welcome to Lawmakers. Let's start with you, Senator Merritt. The Senate overwhelmingly voted in favor of your bill. SB 76 is aimed at having the state employees' health insurance plan, big deal, cover insulin medication at a reduced cost. Tell us more.
That is correct, Donna. There's about 1 million Georgians that suffer from diabetes.
A million.
A million. I come from a family of diabetics, starting with my great-grandmother, my mom. I don't have it yet, but it is in my family. And as we've seen, the cost of insulin has been rising. It's been addressed at the federal level, as President Biden has encouraged insulin makers, manufacturers to lower those costs. So the purpose of my bill was just to extend low-cost insulin options as much as we could. I would love to do it for the entire state of Georgia, but why not start with our state workers? We're trying to retain workers. We want to make, our state jobs more attractive, but we also want to close that gap in care and make sure that we are offering insulin at a lower cost so that we can just keep people healthy. We want our workers to be healthy and happy.
And you got bipartisan support, so there's interest in this.
There was a lot of interest in it because some of our lawmakers are insulin dependent, and they see the value in making sure that we are extending that option out.
Yeah, you're a signer on that bill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's almost a no-brainer for you.
Oh my gosh, yes. For all the reasons that Senator Merritt just named. I mean, diabetes is all around us. So many people suffer from it or are yet to know that this is something that they have. And for us to be able to do something very specific to say that we recognize that this is a problem and that we can do something and take the steps to do it, it's absolutely worth doing. Starting with our state health employees, benefit employees, but then hopefully being able to really expand it from there and do more work. And I believe actually Senator Merritt didn't say this, but she's actually introduced a study committee also around us thinking about the next steps on insulin beyond just this.
That is
Tell
true.
us about
So the partner of this bill is to study insulin manufacturing here in the state of Georgia. Why not? Georgia is #1 for business. It will be good for our universities. It will be good for our workers. And it would give us another market because there are only 3 major insulin providers right now. And they control the cost. Even though Eli Lilly has said, hey, we're reducing that cost, they're not held to that because their company is profits. So I think creating a competitive market will help lower net costs, and why not start in Georgia? We have the best universities, we have the best businesses here, and I think we should explore that option.
Yeah, and we're definitely hearing about it at the federal level. I heard about something on my way here, and I thought, well, that's convenient for what we're talking about today. I want to go to you. You chaired an important committee, a Senate study committee on excellence, innovation, and technology in historically Black colleges and universities. Tell us about it.
So I had the great honor really of being able to chair that study committee over the kind of fall and winter of last year. And really what we did as a bipartisan committee is we heard from business and economic development leaders. We heard from the HBCU presidents and other HBCU leaders themselves, nonprofit and education leaders, to really think about new ways that the state could better support the growth and the sustainability of our 10 HBCUs that we have in the state. And we really learned through that process about the economic impact. These schools have a $1.3 billion annual economic impact to our state, and learned about all of the great work that's happening at these schools for generations. But then we also heard about some of the challenges around infrastructure and around endowments. Many of these schools have far lower endowments than peer institutions around the state. And so from that, we actually came up with 4 specific recommendations, and only one of which is a legislative move. And so Senate Bill 235 is legislation to support one of the recommendations out of the committee to really try to catalyze economic development, community development, and workforce development in and around those schools.
Creating prosperity planning districts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique, innovative approach, and in fact, Georgia could be a real model. This would be the first in the nation kind of approach to this issue. But ultimately, every single one of our 10 HBCUs, whether they're right here at the AU Center, or in Augusta at Payne College, or Savannah at Savannah State, Fort Valley State, or Albany State, they all sit in what are very disinvested communities to this day. And they all have needs, even just as basic as upgrading broadband. And so the idea behind these prosperity planning districts is that you use the schools as an anchor institution and create this vehicle in which dollars can flow down, whether those are federal dollars, state dollars, or private and philanthropic dollars. It gives them a place to actually focus. And if you get a master plan so that people understand the needs and the kinds of growth areas that they're trying to derive, then you let those dollars flow down there. And understanding that the university or the school itself really is the primary driver of what should be happening in and around its campus for the benefit of the school, of course, but also the students, and then people who are living in that community as well.
It helps lift everybody up.
Everybody.
Bipartisan too, with that too.
Absolutely bipartisan.
Okay.
It's got very broad bipartisan support, passed unanimously out of the Economic Development Committee as well. So continue to make progress on that bill.
We'll keep an eye on that. So let's talk now about your bill that deals with carbon monoxide detectors for rentals.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So that's just one piece of a larger issue that I'm trying to address. The problem is just renter protections, habitability issues, renters not living in poor conditions as they are renters. So part of that bill was, I'm going to introduce a bill to require carbon monoxide detectors in rental properties. Carbon monoxide can be a silent, deadly killer. I think there is a need to require those. Right now, the only requirement for rentals is like lights and water and heat. So that's just another level of protection. But broadly, we're having a problem with rentals in general. As we're seeing more of these, we have 2 problems. We have a build-to-rent market right now where it is locking out a lot of everyday Americans from home ownership. That's the first thing. Wall Street is just buying up properties, renting them out. So they are creating an environment for just rental only, a rental culture. And even in those rentals, they're not keeping up those properties. And again, they're leaving a lot of our renters in deplorable conditions. So we need tenant protections for those renters to make sure they're paying enormous prices for rents already. And then you're paying enormous rent in somewhere that's not even kept up in a livable situation. So there are 3 areas, I think, in this housing crisis, I think it's a growing crisis. I'm concerned that we're going to create a future of only renters and the implications that will have for our markets, for our children, because we know that owning a home is the American dream. That is how you build wealth. So now we're creating an environment where that might be a missing piece. So there's 3 areas that we could work on, and I would like to see more policies towards that, more tenant protections, more opportunities for affordable housing, because we do have a problem with just even having the supply of affordable housing. So there needs to be better support and incentives to have affordable housing. The other one is reining in monopolies, these build-to-rent companies that are coming in. And I think if we can kind of slow them down and rein in what they're doing, we can stabilize the market. And then we need a balance between regulation, and we don't want to eliminate local regulation, but there has to be a balance.
Yeah, so there's been work on all of those, and all of those areas. We'll see which ones pass this session. I know Chairman Carpenter, Casey Carpenter, has a comprehensive bill passed.
404.
Right, 404. It passed in the House. We'll see how it does in the Senate, and you guys will be a part of all of that. Yeah. So right now, you think you're at least getting the engine going when it comes to this issue.
404 is a great bill. It is a start, but I think we could push it a lot further. And again, Georgia unfortunately has some of the most lax tenant protection laws, and I think we can do better and serve Georgians better, especially as we're having this increase in more of a rental market. Okay, well, we're going to find out what happens with both of your bills. Keep up with them. Thank you both for being here today. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, a conversation with young journalists who have a passion for reporting on politics and paying close attention to what's happening under the Gold Dome.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Here's what's new this month with Passport.
Whichever way I turn, there's a trap. Let's set this palace on fire.
She's to be married. She is not married yet.
It's never a burden to love or give. The mother is at the heart of everything I do.
These and all your favorite shows are available with Passport. Support your PBS station and stream more with Passport on the PBS app.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating. Doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
We care about things that affect the lives of every American.
We are there at the front lines
to get to the heart of what really matters in every issue.
This country has not seen this in 80 years.
This extraordinary moment in American history.
You're making such a huge impact.
Trust is at the heart of what we do.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. I'm excited about our next segment. We're going to hear the perspective of 2 young journalists. They're Gen Z who love covering politics, and they both first became interested when they were much younger. Joining us are Sarah Callis, who is a digital reporter and content producer for GPB News. She also helps book the guests on Lawmakers and so much more. And Niles Francis is the producer of Peach State Politics with Niles Francis. It's both a website, a podcast, so much more, a newsletter. Welcome to Lawmakers to both of you. Glad to have you on. So,
thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Niles, I want to start with you. So you're on spring break from Georgia Southern, and well, a lot of people your age are out in Florida, likely they're somewhere having fun. Your fun was coming down to the Capitol to cover the action and asking to come on this show. So tell us when you first became interested in politics.
So my interest in politics began when I was like 5 or 6 years old. By that time, I took it upon myself to memorize every American president from George Washington to, at that time, Barack Obama. I guess you could say my interest, like what I like to do now, like covering the state capitol, I guess that began like during the 2020 pandemic, when everybody was stuck at home and I had nothing to do but, I was taking my college classes online, watching the news, everything like that. So I took it upon myself to start following electoral politics, and well, here I am on the set with Donna Lowry.
A newsletter, a website, a podcast. You were young too, Sarah, right? So you were covering the General Assembly. This is your third year. You interned with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You've been with us at Lawmakers for 2 years, but you started young, about the same time, thinking about politics.
Yeah, so my first memories about thinking about politics was asking my parents about the 2004 presidential election.
You asked them about that.
I did ask them about that. I was 4 years old, so definitely very early. But I think a big turning point for me was the 2016 presidential elections. And so I think at that point I had access to the internet, information, and I remember hearing a lot about different politics and topics, but not really knowing my own feelings towards that. And so I really researched a bunch of different topics. And what I really liked about politics was that it allowed me to learn so much about so many different topics.
Yeah, it amazes me. You said you actually physically read newspapers, so you're
Yes.
not just an online person.
Yes.
In the beginning. So let's talk about it. What are some of the things that you think has shaped your generation when it comes to, even thinking about political things?
Right. So I think my generation, one thing that really shaped us is that most of us were either too young to fully understand or not born yet for the September 11th attacks in 2001. I was just a little over 1 year old, so I was alive for it, but I didn't really understand what was going on. And I think that shaped our childhood in ways that I don't know that we can fully understand because we didn't experience beforehand. And I think also our generation, it was really shaped by the 2008 financial crisis. I think a lot of us saw our parents sort of in high stress situations because of that. And I think the 2008 presidential election, we saw President Barack Obama elected as the first Black president. And so that was really cool. That I think in 2011, 2012, the Sandy Hook shooting. And I remember seeing that. And that was sort of the first time where I considered whether I was safe at school. It was also my introduction to journalism because the first story I ever wrote for my middle school newspaper.
Middle school.
Was on that.
That's
and so I think that was a big turning point. And then I think the 2016 presidential election, we saw a lot of younger people start getting involved in politics. I think we saw protests to the results of the election. And I think a lot of people in my generation started caring then.
Yeah, and you guys are the first to really have terrorism drills during your school days.
Mm-hmm.
That had to shape some things for you and thinking about that. The world is was a little more scarier for you, I guess.
Yeah, like the idea of going to school and, not knowing that, whether or not I was going to make it home safe. It's terrorizing. It's frightening to me and many parents and families. Like we go to school, school is supposed to be your safe place away from home for many families. It's viewed as like a safe place away from home. Parents don't want to send their kids to school and, have questions about whether or not they'll make it home safely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Gold Dome stuff, that you were down there pulling lawmakers aside today. So what are your thoughts about the debate over the gender-affirming bill that was in the House today?
It's interesting. It seems to me, from some lawmakers that I was talking with, that They seem to think that the governor is pushing this bill because he's trying to angle for higher office. Like, they seem to think that, because you have other Republican governors pushing similar bills in other states, and many of those governors are aiming to run for president or higher office down the line. So they seem to think that, Governor Kemp, he's going to be term limited in 2026. They're talking about, maybe he could run for president or Senate in 2026, or even be selected for vice president on somebody's ticket in 2024. So bills like this will bolster the Republican base and boost his national profile for higher office.
Yeah. Sarah, what were your thoughts?
It was definitely a very emotional debate today on the House floor, and I think there's a lot of concern over children in their lives on both sides. I think we saw that from lawmakers, and I think, I've heard from some youth activists quite a bit during the process of this bill moving through the legislature, and I think they're very scared and they're very concerned about their future. Some of them have spoken about mental health issues, and they've expressed concern over what may happen to these transgender children if they are not able to receive gender-affirming care.
Yeah. Let's talk about another issue that you said to me at the Capitol today. You were looking for a lawmaker to talk about it. It's gained a lot of national attention. The bill is dealing with states and district attorneys. And so tell us more about it, in particular, this oversight commission for district attorneys and your thoughts on what's happening with that.
So first of all, the bill is viewed as kind of like on national television, on social media, it's kind of viewed as like retaliation for Fani Willis's investigation into President Trump and his campaign for trying to overturn the 2020 election. But it is actually, I like to view it as sort of like Houston Gaines' retaliation towards Deborah Gonzalez, the district attorney out in Athens. Those two competed for a state house seat several times, and they do not have a great relationship. So I guess this is, you could say that it's kind of Houston Gaines trying to one-up Deborah Gonzalez here, but the bill is interesting. It basically creates an oversight commission that would oversee district attorneys across the state. In one version, I believe it would have the state Supreme Court pick the members of that panel, and then in another version, it would have the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, all of whom are Republicans, pick the members of that commission. So we don't know which version is going to ultimately become law, but it's definitely like I said, I think it's like Houston Gaines trying to one-up DA Gonzalez.
It's certainly been interesting to watch it with this. What are some of the things that you've watched this session that have really interested you?
So we talked a little bit earlier about SB 140, which is the ban on gender-affirming care. This sports betting legislation has also really interested me, and I think a lot of people thought that died on crossover day when none of the bills managed to make it over into the other chamber. But as we know now, a Senate committee has amended a clause that would allow for legal sports betting in Georgia into a soapbox derby bill in committee. And so I'm very interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, you guys will get a chance to see how, with what some people say, it's Frankensteined onto a bill. So another bill, something comes back to life in some kind of way. You mentioned mental health a little bit. Your generation is also the first to really admit that you have mental health issues. I mean, it made it okay to talk about it. Yeah.
I think in my generation, it's very normalized to have mental health struggles. I think a lot of people will openly talk about going to therapy. I think the internet has played a big part in that. I think people are able to connect with other people who are also experiencing mental health struggles. That's removed the stigma a little bit, but I think it also, it's opening a lot more discussion, and I think sometimes there's some concern that maybe people are revealing a little bit too much online, and so I think both sides of that debate are very interesting.
You agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. And after this week, we only have a month left in school for the semester, and what's coming up? Finals.
Yeah.
So that's going to take a toll on a lot of students' mental health. I agree that if you are struggling with mental health, if you are, I hate to say this, if you're having suicidal thoughts, you need to seek the help you need. Help is out there for you. Okay. Help is out there for you.
All right. So third year for you,
yes.
And you're a third-year student, and you just graduated from Georgia Tech.
Yes.
So. Wow, we're going to continue to watch what you're both doing, and thanks. It's nice to have. I feel good about young journalists coming in, so thank you.
I feel
so much.
good about it too.
Okay, good. Thanks for coming on the show. You got a great voice too. We'll see about that. That does it for Lawmakers Today. We'll be back on Monday, day 36. Just 5 legislative days left before sine die. Good night.
News.